Wouldn't it be cool if your users can take actions from your Power BI reports, like adding comments or changing a customer address or submitting a service request, or even stopping a machine in the factory with the press of a button? Well, that's now possible with Translytical Task Flows. Well, that's quite a big word and might seem intimidating, at least to me. However, don't let that stop you, because it opens up a whole new world of opportunities in Power BI. So let's take this step together for the first time and see how Translytical Task Flows work. Translytical Task Flows is the combination of two words, transactional and analytical. Now, the analytical part is basically just your Power BI report, but the transactional part, that is the day-to-day business operation tasks that are now possible to do from Power BI. Think of write-backs to the data source, like adding data, editing data, or deleting data, or triggering an API action from your Power BI report. So Translytical Task Flows, they combine the transactional and the analytical component. Now, to get this up and running as quickly as we can, we're going to follow the example in the Microsoft documentation. Now, here it tells us that Translytical Task Flows let us add, edit, or delete data, or call an external API. Now, it's still a preview feature, meaning we still need to turn on that toggle in Power BI, and we also need to make some changes in Fabric. Now, in Power BI, just make sure that you're on the latest version. Now, at the moment of recording, that is the May 25 version, and then go to Settings. Then here we have Preview Features, and then Translytical Task Flows is all the way there at the bottom. Okay, now turn it on, and then go to Power BI Service. Now, in Power BI Service, you need to go to the admin portal. Now, this might be a stopper for some people within an organization that you cannot access the admin portal. Well, then just reach out to the Power BI administrator, and they can then go to the admin portal, which is over here, and toggle on user data function. So let's make sure that that one is enabled, as well as over here, SQL database. Also, that one we're going to use, so enable that one as well. All right, now we're going to create this example in a new workspace. So over here, I'm going to go to Workspaces, click on New Workspace, and let's give this a nice name. This is my YouTube demo workspace. Now, let's click on Apply. And if we go then to Workspace Settings and then License Info, click here on Edit, then you see I'm having over here a Fabric trial capacity. All right, so that's enough for setting up this example. All right, now let's go back to the documentation. And here we're going to follow the Translytical Task Flow tutorial. Now, this example is going to cover three main things. We're going to create an SQL database in Fabric, then configure a user data function that writes back to an SQL database, and integrate a user data function with a Power BI report. Now, that sounds pretty cool, but it's also a little bit intimidating, right? But we're going to manage. All right, so the overview is we're going to store data, develop data, visualize the data. Now, first of all, it starts with creating an SQL database in Fabric. Now, also here, there's again another tutorial, but you will see it's pretty straightforward. But let's follow the link. And here it basically says, in that new workspace that we just created, click on New, and then SQL database. Okay, now we manage that, right? So we go back, we click here on New Item, then scroll down a little bit, and then over here we have SQL database, also preview feature. Let's click on it. And this is going to be my demo database, and let's click on Create. And now we don't really need to go back to the documentation, because if I just want to work with sample data, then let's click on Sample Data. And you see, it already starts importing sample data in our database. Now, you will see it takes a little bit of time, so let's drink a coffee and come back in a minute. And ta-da, it's done. All right, nice. So now we can go here to our database. There we have sales light, LT, with, well, some tables. So we have our sales database set up. Nice. Let's now go back to the documentation and see what step 2 is. All right, so we have a place where we store our data. Now we have to develop the data. And that's where we have to write a Fabric user data function that gets later on called from a Power BI report. Now, these data functions basically allow you to do whatever, right? So that's where the magic really happens. Now, for this example, we are lucky because we can just copy the code, as you will see when we scroll down. So over here, to create a user data function, we just have to click on new item, select user data function, and then we can copy the code from the documentation over here. All right, now I'm going to already click on copy, then go back to our workspace. Now in our workspace, we're going to click again on new item and then scroll all the way down until the develop data section. There we find user data functions. Preview. Let's call this one right back and click on create. Now there's only one button to click on, new function. And here we have some Python code, which is going to basically say what needs to be happening, the action. This is where the real magic happens. But maybe you're a little bit intimidated and think, I've never written anything in Python before. Well, don't worry, we have ChatGPT, we have Claude, Copilot, you name it. And often you also have some nice colleagues that know a little bit of Python that can help you. However, even on your own, you probably will be able to get something up and running very quickly. Now, before we're going to copy over that code from the documentation, we first need to click on Manage Connections. We need to set up the connection to that SQL database from before, which is called for me Demo. So let's connect to it. All right, then I can close this. And this here we're going to replace with that demo code. Now, what is this code doing? Let's have a look. Here we have, first of all, that it imports the fabric functions. Good. Then UUID, which is a Python library to generate some IDs, which are then used for example purposes later on. All right. And what is important for us is that we set up the connection right. So we have here SQL database and the alias, well, here my database is called demo. And you see this code is nicely commented, and so it takes a product description and a product model ID as input parameters and writes them back to the SQL database. Users will provide these parameters in the Power BI report. So you see we have some arguments, the connection, the product description, the product model ID, and the output always needs to be text string. Okay. Now, then there's some error handling, right? So if somebody puts in a very long product description that has more than 200 characters, it throws in an error. So you always want to do a little bit of error handling, and then it establishes the connection to the database. Then over here, it inserts data into the product description table, okay? Then gets that result from the previous query, and then inserts the data into the product model description table. All right, now later on in Power BI, we can see how these tables are related to one another. Then it probably makes a little bit more sense. But you can see over here, it inserts that in there together with the culture. Okay, now the culture over here is just basically a placeholder for now. All right, good. So not that much code for what it's doing, right? So it's very powerful, as you will see in a second, once we're going to use this in our Power BI report, which probably is the next step. Let's go to the documentation again. And indeed, it's almost the last step because probably you want to test the sample code and we still need to grant user permissions. Okay, because, well, the people that are going to use your Power BI reports, they also need to be able to execute the function and view the function logs. Okay, so that is important. Let's go back. Now let's click first on publish. Now you see it's not called Hello World or Hello Fabric anymore, but write 1 to SQL database. All right, and this one we want to test. Now over here we have the properties. We click on run, and here we can enter some values. However, you need to wait a little bit until it's done publishing. So let me just do this again. And I see in the bottom left corner, it's still publishing. So again, we have to wait a bit. Yes, it worked. And now we can test the function. So over here, we have for the product description, we just put in, well, description test. And over here for the model ID, let's just put in a 1, click on run. And you see the status goes to in progress. And a few seconds later, product description was added. Nice. Now to double check this, you can, of course, go to the database. And then here we have all the different tables. And this is product description. And then here for the modified date, I'm going to sort this in descending order. And you see, there you go. We have a description. Test was added as a new role. Nice. All right, now we can go back to our function because there was one more thing that we needed to do, and that is click on share. Because we want to make sure that people that are interacting with our report can later also use it. So people in your organization can execute functions and view function logs. All right, now we get to step 3. We have to create a Power BI report, connect to the SQL database, easy. All right, then we're going to import description model and model product description. Okay, and what is important, we have to go for direct query mode if we directly want to reflect the changes that we make, meaning the descriptions that we add, that they are straight away visible. If you would go for import mode, then you would really have to refresh the model for these changes to reflect. So usually for these type of cases, you want to reflect it straight away, then you need direct query. Okay, so let's go to Power BI. And here we can click on One Lake Catalog, and here we have SQL database. Now there we have our demo workspace, all good. Click on connect. Now it might be that you have to log in, and then we see everything in the database. And what we needed is the product description, model, and the model product description. That's it. Then click on load, and then here we want to go for direct query. Click OK, and boom, there you go. We have our 3 tables. Let's also switch to the modeling view and see now how these tables are linked together. So we have sales product model, we have the product description, and over here we have product model. Okay, and these filter the product model. All right, now let's go over here to the report view, because there we are going to add, first of all, a table, and we're going to build a simple table where we take name from product model and model ID from the model product description. So here we have product model, name goes on columns. Then over here we have model product description, and here we take the product model ID. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and now it looks exactly like in the example. Okay, now the next thing that we need to do is insert a new slicer. And to be able to do that step, we need to make sure that it is also toggled on under preview options. And you can only use the new slicers like text slicer, the list slicer, button slicer. So it needs to be one of the newer ones, okay? Now in this example, it's going to be text slicer. So let's add that as well. And let me resize it. Let's maybe just put it right above the table over here. All right, now we can also update the title, like here, write a new product description. Let's copy that over. So over here, you go take that text slicer, formatting options, title, put that as the title. And then, of course, we need a button for the user to trigger the action. And there we have now a new type of action. All right, so we go back to our report, click on Insert, Buttons, blank button, and I'm going to put this one maybe at the bottom of the table. So let me resize this and put the button over here. Okay, now button style, there we can add some text. So for example, submit or enter, whatever you like. And there you also find we have now a new state. Before we only had default hover press disabled, but now also a loading state. So when that function gets triggered, you have to wait a little bit. What shows during that time, that's the loading state, okay? Now we can spend some time making this pretty, but I just leave it as it is for now. And then of course we need to set up that button, and that's where it gets interesting. So if we go back again, select the button, then go over here to action, turn it on, and you see there's a new type. Data function. All right, now let me just collapse this. Now here you see we have the type data function. Workspace is going to be my YouTube demo workspace. Function set, write back. That's the name of the function set, and the function itself, write one to SQL DB. Well, we want to refresh the report after a successful outcome. So therefore I leave that one on. And then you see we have product description, product model ID, these arguments, these inputs to that function. All right, so it depends on the function that you choose, how you wrote it, which input arguments you have. that will show over here. Now for the product description, we're going to take the text from the slicer. All right, so what the user put in. And then for the model ID, there we can use conditional formatting. So there you basically set the field on which it should be based. All right, now let's do this step by step. So here, product description, write a new product description. All right, so that's the title of that text slicer that we have there. Then product model ID, there we have to click on FX. Field value. Then from here, we want to have the product model ID over here. And summarization, just the maximum, the one that the user later on will click on. Okay, let's click on OK. And that's basically it. But now, of course, we can make it a little bit nicer. So, for example, add a loading effect. So in the example, it adds a spinner. So let's do the same. So I'm going to go back and then again, go to button style, loading, here, icon. And we can go for a spinner icon. And I believe it also adds a little bit of padding on the left-hand side. Well, I leave that up to you. All right, so this is set up. Now we are almost there. It still wants to show that description that you add in another table. All right, so if we create that table quickly, so we have then name from product model, description from product description, and over here the modified date from product description. Okay, so let's go to our Power BI report, insert a new table. Let's place it right next to the other one. Here we take the name from product model and then the description from product description over here. All right, and we have the modified date as well. Okay, now I want everything to be visible, so I just make this column a little bit smaller so that we have everything in one view. Now, of course, then you can make everything nicer, this button with hover effects, etc. But that's not the point. I just want to see if this translytical task flow is working. All right, so to do that, we can, it says, trigger it from Power BI desktop, but that's not the real experience that the user will have, of course. So therefore, let's publish the report and let's see if everything works in Power BI service as an end user. Okay, so I'm going to save our report and click on publish. So home, publish. You want to save your changes? Yes. And this is going to be my Translytical Task Flows TT example report. All right, now let's click on save. Put it here in our YouTube demo workspace. Select, and there we have our link. Let's follow it, log in, and there we are. That doesn't look good. This data source demo, blah, 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 is missing credentials. Oh, okay, so it's just the credentials issue to the SQL database. We have to go to our workspace, then go to our TT example model, and then here we can go to settings and, there, data source credentials. All right, we have to click on edit. Now, there you can go for basic or auth2. Now, okay, report views can access this data source with their own Power BI identities. Yep, all right, sign in. And it might be that you first get this error, but you see now it's working, I hope. Yeah, success, perfect. Okay, now that message hopefully will then disappear when we go to our report. So back to our YouTube demo workspace, open that report, and that looks better. Okay, so now the moment of truth, drum rolls. All right, so we are going to enter some text. So Translytical Task Flows are awesome. All right, now we put that in our slicer. Yes, then I click that arrow. Submit button is now clickable, and we want to have it over here for this model ID. Okay, click on submit. Okay, we have the loading icon, and it says the action on your report was completed successfully. And where is it? There it is. Translytical task flows are awesome. Yes, it works. So we have our example up and running, our first Translytical task flow. I have to get used to that name. However, it is awesome, right? Because this does not only allow us to add data, we can also update data, edit data, delete records. The opportunities are endless, especially if you consider that you can also trigger some actions in different systems, right? So that what I started the introduction with. You could, for example, look at temperatures of different machines in your factory and see, this one is getting too hot, not good. Click the button and then through an API, turn that machine off. That's awesome, right? So you can make it specific to what is useful for your organization, for your team. So now, of course, this is a simple example, and writing that function might be tricky. However, I think that's going to be a topic for another video where we explore how easy is it actually, if you have no coding experience, to get something up and running using ChatGPT and see what we can do with this new functionality, which I think really opens a new world, right? Which brings together that business transactional component together with the analytical component of Power BI, which is awesome. Now, if you like this video and you thought that this example is helpful, also check out these videos over here. If you want to build reports together with me, then check out my design transformation program over there. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.